The doorbell rang at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday evening, 6 weeks before Christmas. I wasn't imagining anything that night. That much became clear soon enough. "I'll get it," I said, pushing back from the dining table. Our kids, Emma, 10, and Jacob, 8, were arguing about something related to Minecraft. Ashley was scrolling through her phone, half listening to them, wine glass in hand. A normal Wednesday. The last normal Wednesday of my life, as it turned out. The man at the door wore a polo shirt and khakis. He looked bored, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. He probably had. "Taylor Mitchell?" "That's me." He thrust a thick manila envelope into my hands. "You've been served." Before I could respond, he was already walking back to his car, a silver sedan that had seen better days. I stood there in the doorway, the Georgia evening air cool against my face, staring at the envelope like it might bite me. "Who was it?" Ashley called from the dining room. I didn't answer. I was too busy reading the return address. Tennessee Department of Human Services, Child Support Enforcement Division. My blood ran cold. Not chilly. Cold. Like someone had replaced it with ice water. I walked back to the dining room slowly, opening the envelope as I went. The legal language swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out like they were written in fire. Petition for child support. Hannah Caldwell, petitioner. Minor child, Ethan James. Caldwell, age 6. Alleged father, Taylor Mitchell. Retroactive support requested, $178,800. Ongoing monthly support, $2,400. "Taylor, you look like you've seen a ghost." Ashley had put down her phone. The kids had stopped arguing. I looked up at my wife of 12 years, the mother of my children, the woman I'd built a life with, brick by brick, from a cramped apartment in Buckhead to this 5-bedroom house in the suburbs. "Someone's claiming I fathered her child," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, distant, in Tennessee. I watched Ashley's face carefully in that moment. It's funny what you notice when your world starts crumbling. The micro-expressions, the tells. I'd played poker in college, enough to recognize when someone was holding cards they didn't want me to see. Her first reaction wasn't shock. It wasn't outrage on my behalf. It was something else entirely. Fear. Recognition. The blood draining from her face before she caught herself and arranged her features into an appropriate mask of concern. "That's insane," she said. "Obviously a mistake. Probably identity theft or something." "Probably," I agreed. "Let me see that." She reached for the papers, but I didn't hand them over. Instead, I set them down on the table, face up, where we could both read them. "Hannah Caldwell," I said, "Knoxville, Tennessee. Claims we have a 6-year-old son together." "You've never even been to Tennessee." That's what I told myself. So it's a scam. Some kind of, I don't know. They probably send these out to hundreds of men, hoping someone will just pay to make it go away. Maybe. I studied her face again. "You don't seem surprised." "What? Of course I'm surprised. I'm shocked." "You didn't even ask if it was true." Ashley's eyes flicked away from mine, just for a second. "Because I know you. Because I trust you. Why would I ask something like that?" "Most wives would." She laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "Well, I'm not most wives. I know my husband." Jacob looked up from his plate. "What's happening?" "Nothing, buddy," I forced a smile. "Just some paperwork Daddy has to deal with. Boring adult stuff." Ashley stood up abruptly. "I'll get the ice cream. Kids, who wants dessert?" The kids cheered. The tension broke, or seemed to, but I'd seen what I'd seen, and I wasn't going to forget it. The next morning, I sat in the offices of Patricia Webb, A family law attorney whose name had come up 3 times when I'd asked around. Her office was on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown, all glass and chrome and leather chairs that cost more than my first car. She read through the documents while I sat in silence, watching her face for any reaction. She gave nothing away. 23 years of family law had taught her to keep her cards close. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be direct with you." She set down the papers and removed her reading glasses. "You need to take this seriously. Tennessee doesn't mess around with child support. If you ignore this, they'll enter a default judgment against you. Garnish your wages, put liens on your property." "I've never even been to Tennessee," I said. "I've never met this woman. I've never been unfaithful to my wife." Patricia's expression didn't change. I imagined she'd heard that speech before, usually from men who were lying through their teeth. That may well be true. I've been doing this long enough to know that not every accusation is legitimate. But I've also been doing it long enough to know that sometimes the men in that chair are lying to me, and sometimes they're lying to themselves. I'm not lying. "Then we prove it," she said simply. "DNA test. I have a lab I work with. Results in 5 to 7 business days. If you're not the father, the case gets dismissed. Simple as that. And if the results are tampered with? If this is some kind of scam? Chain of custody is documented every step of the way. The sample goes from your cheek to the lab in a sealed container with your signature and a witness. It's ironclad." She leaned forward. "Mr. Mitchell, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen scams and I've seen legitimate cases where the man genuinely didn't know. Either way, the DNA doesn't lie. What about my wife? Should I tell her about this?" Patricia considered the question. "That's entirely your decision. Some men prefer to keep it private until they have answers. Others want their spouse involved from the start. There's no right answer. She already knows. She was there when I was served." "How did she react?" I thought about Ashley's face, the flash of fear before the mask came down. "She said it must be identity theft." "That's a reasonable explanation. It does happen." Patricia stood, signaling the meeting was ending. "Get the DNA test, Mr. Mitchell. Once we have results, we'll know what we're dealing with." I went to the testing facility that afternoon. A board technician swabbed the inside of my cheek, sealed the sample, had me sign 3 forms, and told me to have a nice day. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. 7 business days. That's what they told me. 7 days to prove I wasn't the father of a child I'd never met, conceived with a woman I'd never touched. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Ashley, listening to her breathe, and I pulled up Facebook on my phone. Hannah Caldwell wasn't hard to find. Knoxville, Tennessee. Dental hygienist at a practice called Bright Smiles Family Dentistry. Single mother. Her profile picture showed a woman in her mid-30s, brown hair, pleasant face. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that screamed, scammer. I scrolled through her public posts, going back years. Photos of her son, a boy with sandy hair and a gap-toothed smile. Birthday parties, first days of school. The ordinary documentation of an ordinary life. Then I found something that made my stomach drop. 6 years ago. 7 years ago. Photos of Hannah at locations I recognized. Piedmont Park. The Atlanta Beltline. The rooftop bar at Ponce City Market. She'd been in Atlanta. My city. Around the time this child would have been conceived. This wasn't some random scam. This was something else entirely. The DNA results came back on day 9. I'd told Ashley I was going to my attorney's office to discuss the case. She didn't offer to come. She didn't even ask about it. Patricia Webb handed me the envelope with something almost like sympathy in her eyes. "Whatever's in there," she said, "we can handle it." I opened it. Based on the DNA analysis, Taylor Mitchell is excluded as the biological father of the minor child Ethan James Caldwell. The probability of paternity is 0.0%. Relief hit me like a wave for about 3 seconds. Then the questions started. "I'm not the father," I said. "Excellent news." Patricia was already making notes. "We'll file the results with the court. The case will be dismissed. You can put this behind you." "Who is this woman?" I asked. "How did she know my name? Why me?" Patricia looked up. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand the curiosity, but my advice? Let it go. You're cleared. Move on with your life." I should have listened to her. A smarter man would have taken the win and walked away. But I've never been good at leaving questions unanswered. It's what made me successful as an architect. The obsessive attention to detail, the need to understand how every piece fit together. It's also, I would learn, what made me dangerous when someone tried to play me for a fool. I called Hannah Caldwell 3 days later. Against my attorney's advice, against my own better judgment. "Who is this?" Her voice was wary. Southern accent, a hint of exhaustion that comes from raising a child alone. "My name is Taylor Mitchell. I think you received a letter about a child support case. You have some nerve calling me." Her voice turned hard, sharp. "You walk out on me pregnant, disappear for 6 years, and now you want to what? Explain yourself?" "Ma'am, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We have never met. I have never been to Knoxville. I took a DNA test, and I am not your son's father." Silence on the other end. Then, "That's impossible." "I have the results. Probability of paternity 0%. Someone used my identity, Miss Caldwell. Someone pretended to be me, but it wasn't me." More silence. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by confusion. And beneath that, something that sounded like fear. "You're not... but you look exactly like..." "I look exactly like who?" "I have pictures," she said, "from when we were together." He showed me his license. He showed me his business cards. He was an architect from Atlanta named Taylor Mitchell. I am an architect from Atlanta named Taylor Mitchell, but I've never met you. And I'm starting to think we should talk in person. We met in Knoxville 5 days later, a coffee shop near the university. Neutral territory. I told Ashley I had a client meeting in Chattanooga and would be back late. She accepted this without question. Another tell I filed away for later. "Be safe," she said as I left, kissing me on the cheek. Traffic on I-75 can be terrible this time of year. I'll be fine. I drove north, watching the Atlanta skyline fade in my rear-view mirror, and I thought about all the times I'd made this drive. To Chattanooga, to Nashville, to visit clients or scout project sites. Never to Knoxville. Never to meet a woman who claimed I'd fathered her child. Hannah Caldwell looked older than her photos. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and hard years. She was already seated when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee like a lifeline. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You look just like him. Almost exactly like him." I sat down across from her. "Tell me everything." "I don't even know where to start." "Start at the beginning. How did you meet him?" And she did. It had started 7 years ago. Hannah had been going through a divorce, her first marriage, to a high school sweetheart who turned out to be a gambling addict. She was vulnerable, looking for someone stable, someone real. I was at my lowest point, she said. Joey had cleaned out our savings account to cover his debts. I found out about it 3 days before our mortgage payment was due. That's when I finally filed for divorce. I'm sorry. Don't be. Best decision I ever made. But at the time, I was a mess. My sister convinced me to go to this dental conference in Atlanta. Networking, she said. Get your mind off things. Meet new people. That's where you met him? She nodded. The first night. There was a reception. Lots of industry people milling around. I was standing by the bar trying not to look as miserable as I felt when this woman came up to me. Blonde, pretty, really friendly. She said she'd noticed I looked a little lost. My heart rate picked up. A woman? She introduced herself, but I can't remember her name. Something common. Sarah, maybe? Or Jennifer? It was 7 years ago. Hannah shook her head. Anyway, she asked if I was in town for the conference, and we got to talking. She was from Atlanta, she said. Worked in interior design. Ashley had a side business doing interior design consulting. It had never taken off the way she'd hoped, but she still listed it on her social media profiles. Then what? She introduced me to her friend. Said he was a great guy, just going through a rough patch. Getting divorced from his wife, dealing with a lot of stress. She thought we'd hit it off. And this friend was you. Or who I thought was you. Hannah's voice cracked. He said his name was Taylor Mitchell. He was an architect from Atlanta. He showed me his business card. It had your name on it, your firm's logo, everything. He showed me his driver's license when I asked to see ID as a joke. It looked completely real. I felt sick. What did he look like? Like you. Same height, same build, same coloring, same hair, same smile. She paused. Not identical, I guess. Looking back, now that I'm sitting across from the real you, I can see differences. His face was a little narrower. His ears were different. But when you're not looking for those things, when you're not comparing, you believed he was me. Of course I believed it. Why wouldn't I? He had your ID, your cards, your stories. He knew things about your life, about your house, your car, your childhood. She looked down at her coffee. He had a scar, right here. She touched her left shoulder. I unbuttoned my sleeve and pulled it up, showing her my shoulder. The scar was still there, faded white against my skin. A childhood bike accident. I told that story 100 times. Hannah's face went pale. He had the exact same one. Same place, same size. Someone told him about it, I said. Someone who knew me well enough to know details like that. The affair, if you could call it that, had lasted about 3 months. They'd met up in Atlanta, in Knoxville, once at a cabin in the Smokies. She'd fallen in love with him. With me, as she believed. With the man who was wearing my life like a costume. I thought he was perfect, Hannah said, tears forming in her eyes. Kind, successful, stable. Everything Joey wasn't. He told me he was almost finalized with his divorce. Said he couldn't wait to introduce me to his daughter. Emma, he said her name was. My daughter's name. He told me about his house in Roswell, the pool in the backyard, the Japanese maple he'd planted when his wife, his ex-wife, he said, was pregnant with their first child. I'd planted that tree myself. I remembered hauling it from the nursery, digging the hole while Ashley watched from the kitchen window. Then one day, he was just gone. Phone disconnected, email bouncing back. She'd tried to find him, but the address he'd given her for his office didn't exist. The house. My house. She'd driven by once, but had never seen him there. She found out she was pregnant a month later. "I raised my son alone," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I told him his father was a coward who ran away. I believed that. But you're telling me he was never even you." "He wasn't me," I confirmed, "but he wanted you to think he was. The question is why?" Hannah shook her head. "I don't know. He never asked for money. He paid for everything when we were together. He gave me gifts. He was wonderful, actually, right up until he disappeared." I had one more question. It had been burning in my mind since we started talking. "This woman who introduced you, the blonde, can you describe her more?" Hannah thought for a moment. "Mid-30s, like I said. Slim, well-dressed, Southern accent, Georgian, I think. She seemed really close with him, knew all about his situation. She was the one who convinced me to give him a chance when I was hesitant." "Do you remember anything else about her? Any detail at all?" "She wore her wedding ring on a chain around her neck. I noticed because I'd just taken mine off. She said she'd lost weight and it didn't fit anymore, but she couldn't bear to resize it because her husband had picked it out himself." Ashley had worn her ring on a chain for almost a year after Emma was born. She'd gained weight during the pregnancy, then lost it quickly afterward. The ring didn't fit right. I'd offered to have it resized, but she'd said no, that she wanted to keep it exactly as I'd chosen it. "I thought it was sweet," Hannah said, "that she loved her husband so much." A blonde woman from Atlanta, mid-30s, interior designer, who wore her wedding ring on a chain because her husband had picked it out. The picture was beginning to form, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't confront Ashley, not yet. I knew better. In my profession, you don't start demolishing a building until you understand its structure completely. You don't swing the wrecking ball until you've studied the blueprints, identified the load-bearing walls, planned every step of the collapse. Ashley was a building I thought I knew. Now I realized I'd never even seen the real blueprints. I started watching her, documenting. Every time she said she was going to the gym, I noted it. Every phone call she took in another room. Every time her eyes shifted when I asked a simple question. The lies were small, but they were everywhere once I started looking. "I'm meeting Sarah for lunch." But Sarah was out of town that week. I'd seen her post from a beach in Mexico. My yoga class ran late. But she came home without the flush she always had after hot yoga. Hair perfect, makeup unsmudged. "I need to run some errands back in a few hours." 4 hours. What errands take 4 hours on a Tuesday afternoon? I kept my face neutral. I played my role. The oblivious husband. The man who didn't suspect a thing. Inside, I was running calculations, building my case, brick by brick. Derek Lawson was a former FBI agent who'd gone private about 5 years earlier. His office was in a strip mall in Marietta, between a nail salon and a pet groomer. It wasn't impressive, but his reputation was. "Mr. Mitchell." He didn't shake my hand, just gestured to a chair across from his desk. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen things that would keep most people up at night. "What can I do for you?" I told him everything. The lawsuit, the DNA test, Hannah Caldwell, the impersonator. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Someone knew you well enough to pass as you for 3 months, he said. "New details your own mother might not remember. That's not some random identity thief." "I know." "You suspect someone close to you." It wasn't a question. I nodded. I need you to find out who impersonated me, I said. Find the man. Follow the trail. I want to know everything. And your wife? I hesitated. Then, not yet. Find the impersonator first. Then we'll see where that leads. Derek quoted me a rate. I paid a retainer. We shook hands. The hunt had begun. 2 weeks later, I drove back to Knoxville. Hannah had agreed to show me the photographs, the ones she'd taken during their 3-month relationship. Evidence of my doppelganger. We met at her apartment this time. Her son was at school. She handed me a photo album, old-fashioned and physical, the kind people made before everything moved to phones and clouds. I turned the pages slowly. The man in the photographs looked like me. Not exactly. When I looked closely, I could see differences. His jaw was slightly narrower, his ears set a little differently. But the resemblance was uncanny. Same height, same build, same coloring. Same general arrangement of features. From across a room, in dim light, after a few drinks, he could have passed for my twin. Do you recognize him? Hannah asked. No. I kept turning pages, looking for clues, anything distinctive. But someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure you'd recognize me. There was one photo that caught my attention. The man was at a restaurant, laughing at something off camera. Behind him, through a window, I could see a street sign. Peachtree Street, Atlanta. And in the reflection of the window, barely visible, was a woman. Blonde. Partially out of frame. I knew that profile, that tilt of the head. I'd seen it across from me at thousands of dinners. Ashley. I kept my face neutral. Thanked Hannah for her time. Told her I'd be in touch when I had more information. Then I drove home, hands steady on the wheel, mind racing at 100 miles an hour. Derek Lawson's next report came on day 32. We met at his office again. He looked grimmer than before, the expression of a man who'd found something he wished he hadn't. He slid a folder across the desk. Your impersonator used your identity at a hotel in Knoxville, he said. The Marriott downtown. Checked in under your name, showed an ID that matched your information but had his photo. Georgia driver's license. High-quality fake. Security footage? Long gone. But I found something else. He tapped the folder. Someone opened a credit card in your name about 7 years ago. Chase Sapphire. Used it for 6 months. Hotels in Tennessee, restaurants, jewelry stores. Then closed it and paid off the balance in full. I never saw any. You wouldn't have. Statements went to a P.O. box in Knoxville. Account was paid and closed before it ever hit your credit report. Very clean, very professional. He paused. This wasn't amateur hour, Mr. Mitchell. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. What about the man himself? Any leads on his identity? Working on it. I have a contact at the Georgia DMV running facial recognition on the fake ID. See if it matches anyone in the system. Derek leaned back in his chair. But I have something else for you. Something you need to know. Tell me. You asked me to hold off on your wife. I did. But in the course of my investigation, I came across some information I think you need to hear. My stomach tightened. What kind of information? Your wife is currently having an affair. Has been for approximately 18 months. I'd been expecting it, bracing for it. But hearing the words out loud was different from suspecting them in the dark corners of my mind. Who? Man named Ryan Hollister, 40 years old. Pharmaceutical sales rep. They meet at a hotel near your wife's gym every Thursday afternoon. Thursday. Her extended yoga class. Every single week. You have evidence? Derek slid another folder across the desk. Photographs, time-stamped, dates going back 6 months. I can get more if you need them. I opened the folder. There they were. Ashley and a man I didn't recognize, walking into a hotel. Ashley and the same man at a restaurant. Ashley getting into his car, a silver Lexus. In one photo, she was laughing, head thrown back, looking happier than I'd seen her in years. "I'm sorry," Derek said. "I know this isn't what you hired me to find." "Actually, it might be exactly what I hired you to find." I looked up from the photos. The woman who introduced Hannah Caldwell to my impersonator, she was blonde, mid-30s, from Atlanta. Interior design. Derek's expression sharpened. "You think your wife was involved?" "I think it's possible. More than possible." I closed the folder. "I need you to investigate Ryan Hollister. Everything about him. I want to know who this man is." "You think he's connected to the identity theft?" "I think there's a very good chance the man sleeping with my wife is the same man who pretended to be me 7 years ago." Derek let out a low whistle. That's something. That's why I need you to be thorough. This isn't just about an affair anymore. This is about my entire life. The information came in pieces over the next 2 weeks, each piece worse than the last. Ryan Hollister had been married twice before. Both divorces. No children that anyone knew of. He'd moved around a lot. Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama. Never stayed in one place more than a few years. His social media was carefully curated. Photos from exotic vacations, professional headshots, the image of a successful, charming, unattached man. But there were gaps, holes in his history, jobs that didn't quite line up, addresses that led to empty lots. "The guy's a ghost," Derek told me over the phone. "Every time I think I've got a solid lead, it evaporates. He's been using variations of his name for years. Ryan Hollister, R.J. Hollister, James Ryan. Always just different enough to muddy the waters." "Keep digging." "I intend to, but there's something else." I got a hit on the facial recognition. I held my breath. The fake Georgia license used in Knoxville? The photo matches a man who was arrested in Nashville 3 years ago. Charges were dropped, but the booking photo's still in the system. And it's him. Ryan Hollister. Same guy who's sleeping with your wife. Derek's voice was grim. "You were right, Mr. Mitchell. He's the impersonator." Then Derek found the photograph that changed everything. It was from a corporate newsletter, 8 years old. A pharmaceutical company team photo. Ryan Hollister was in the second row, younger, smiling for the camera. I stared at the face. It was the same man from Hannah Caldwell's photos. The same man who had worn my identity like a costume. Who had seduced her, impregnated her, and disappeared. Ryan Hollister was my impersonator. And he was sleeping with my wife. The pattern came into focus like a nightmare developing. Ashley and Ryan hadn't started their affair 18 months ago. They'd been together before, at least 7 years ago. Maybe longer. Maybe the whole time. She had given him everything he needed to become me. The details about my scar, the photos of my car, my house, my office, my routines, my business cards, my life. He'd used that information to seduce other women, to run scams, to play games that left damage in their wake. Single mothers, abandoned children, stolen identities. And Ashley had helped him. Maybe not directly. Maybe she hadn't forged the documents or opened the accounts. But she'd been the source. The inside woman. The one who made it all possible. I sat in my study, looking at the evidence spread across my desk, and I felt something cold and hard form in my chest. I'd built a life with this woman, given her 12 years, 2 children, everything I had, and she'd been hollowing it out from the inside the whole time. Derek dug deeper into Ryan Hollister's past. What he found confirmed my worst fears. Ryan had a juvenile record, sealed, but Derek had contacts who still owed him favors from his bureau days. Fraud, identity theft, confidence schemes. He'd done 2 years in juvenile detention for running an elaborate scam at age 16. He'd learned early, and he'd never stopped. There were patterns in his adult life too. Always targeting married women. Always women married to successful men, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, men with money, men with identities worth stealing. He'd gather information through the affairs, use it for financial fraud, identity theft, whatever opportunity presented itself. He was careful, methodical. He never left traces that led back to him. The FBI had never connected the dots because the crimes were spread across multiple states, different jurisdictions, different victims who never talked to each other. But Derek had connected them. And now, so had I. I found the final piece of evidence on Ashley's old laptop. The one she'd asked me to throw away 3 years ago when she got a new one. I'd shoved it in the back of a closet instead. Forgot about it until now. The hard drive hadn't been wiped properly. Fragments of old emails were still there. Conversations with someone saved in her contacts as Rachel, but the email address was clearly not a woman named Rachel. He's going to Chattanooga on Thursday. Should be gone until at least 8. The password to his office is still 4793. He never changes it. Attached. Pics from the beach house. The security code is in the album. She'd been feeding him information for years. Our schedules, our passwords, our security codes. Everything he needed to help himself to our lives. I found one more email, recent, from about 2 months ago. I moved another $5 from the vacation account, told him it was for the kids' activities. My wife had been stealing from our family to fund her affair partner's lifestyle. The cold thing in my chest turned to ice. I discovered, in those dark weeks, that I had a talent for patience, for compartmentalization. I could sit across the dinner table from Ashley, watch her smile at our children, listen to her tell me about her day and show nothing. The kids couldn't know. Not yet. Emma and Jacob were innocent in all of this, and they would need me stable and strong when the truth came out. So I played my role, the oblivious husband, the trusting fool. But behind the mask I was planning. I met with Victoria Palmer, the best divorce attorney in Atlanta. She had a corner office in a tower downtown and a reputation for never losing. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, after I'd laid out my evidence, "this is one of the most well-documented cases of marital misconduct I've ever seen. What are my options? Georgia is an equitable distribution state. Affairs can affect alimony decisions. But what you have here goes far beyond adultery." She tapped the folder of evidence. "Your wife has been complicit in identity theft against you specifically. She's stolen money from marital accounts. She's aided and abetted federal crimes. Can she be charged? Possibly. But that might not be in your best interest. Criminal proceedings take time, and they're unpredictable. What I recommend is this. We use the threat of criminal prosecution as leverage. In exchange for immunity, she agrees to our terms in the divorce." "What terms?" "Full custody of the children. Minimal alimony. No claim to your business assets. She walks away with what she came in with, and she should be grateful for that." I nodded slowly. "And Ryan Hollister?" "That's where it gets interesting. Victoria leaned forward. I made some calls. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has an open case on Hollister. They've been building it for 2 years, but keep hitting dead ends. If you come forward with what you know, you could blow their case wide open. I thought about Hannah Caldwell, about her son, growing up without a father, about all the other women Ryan had deceived over the years, the damaged lives, the stolen identities, the children who didn't know who their fathers really were. Make the call, I said. Special Agent Natalie Ross met me in Atlanta a week later. TBI, Financial Crimes Division. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. We sat in a conference room at Victoria's office. I laid out everything I knew. When I finished, Agent Ross was silent for a long moment. "Mr. Mitchell," she finally said, "you've just connected 6 separate investigations across 4 states. We knew Hollister was dirty. We just couldn't prove how dirty. What do you need from me?" "Everything you have, documentation, testimony, and," she paused, "your cooperation in one more thing." "Name it." "We want to catch him in the act. Your wife doesn't know you're onto her, correct?" "She has no idea." "Then we'd like you to stay in that position a little longer. Give us time to build a federal case. Multiple state lines means FBI involvement. We're talking serious prison time if we do this right." "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month." She studied my face. "I know that's a lot to ask. Pretending everything's normal with a woman who's been betraying you for years." "I've been doing it for months already," I said. "What's a few more weeks?" The FBI took over the case. Special Agent Marcus Webb, no relation to my original attorney, became my primary contact. They had me stay in my routine, act normal, keep Ashley unsuspecting. I learned things during those weeks. Things about Ryan Hollister that made my blood boil. He wasn't just a con man, he was a predator. Agent Webb laid it out for me in a meeting at their Atlanta field office. "We've identified at least 6 other victims across 4 states. Women he seduced using stolen identities. Some of them he defrauded financially. Others, like Hannah Caldwell, were just sport." The word came out bitter. "He enjoys the deception, the control. Breaking into someone else's life and wearing it like a mask." "And Ashley. She's not his first source. We've identified at least 2 other women over the years who fed him information about their husbands. He targets a certain type. Women who are bored, or unhappy, or looking for excitement. He makes them feel special. Then he makes them complicit. She stole money from our accounts, gave him our personal information." "Yes. And she'll have to answer for that." Agent Webb's expression softened slightly. "But she's also a victim in a way. He's very good at what he does. He makes people think they're in love." I didn't feel sympathy. Maybe I should have. But I couldn't find it in me. "What about his brother?" I asked. "I read in the file that he has a partner. Kevin Hollister handles the technical side, fake IDs, document forgery, credit applications. They're a team. Have been since Ryan got out of juvie." Agent Webb pulled out another photo. "We're gonna get them both." I looked at the photo. 2 brothers, side by side. Ryan with his easy smile and chameleon features. Kevin thinner, sharper, the look of a man who spent his life in front of computers. They'd built an empire out of stolen lives. I was going to help tear it down. The setup was simple. I would come home one evening and casually mention to Ashley that I'd found some old credit card statements that didn't make sense. Statements from 7 years ago. I'd act confused, concerned. Not accusatory. She would panic. She would contact Ryan. And when she did, the FBI would be listening. Agent Webb prepped me in his office the afternoon before. "You're not trying to get a confession," he said. "You're just planting a seed. Make her nervous enough to reach out to Hollister, that's all we need." What if she doesn't call him? What if she just denies everything? She'll call him. She's been in this with him for years. When she feels threatened, her instinct will be to warn him. That's what partners do. He handed me a small device. "This is a recording unit. Clips to your belt, picks up everything within 20 feet. Backup for our remote surveillance." Is this legal? Georgia's a one-party consent state. You're a party to the conversation. It's legal. I turned the device over in my hands. Such a small thing to carry the weight of a marriage's end. "One more thing," Agent Webb said. "Don't overplay it. You've spent months being the oblivious husband. Don't suddenly become suspicious overnight. Casual. Confused. That's all." The night of the operation, I felt strangely calm. I'd been running on adrenaline for months, but now, with the end in sight, a peaceful clarity settled over me. I drove home listening to the radio, some classic rock station I'd had on in the background for years. The Eagles were playing Lion Eyes. I almost laughed at the irony. I walked through the front door at my usual time. Ashley was in the kitchen, doing something with salad, the domestic scene we'd played out 1,000 times before. "Hey," she said without looking up. "How was your day?" "Strange, actually." I set down my briefcase, kept my voice casual. "I was going through some old files at the office and found something weird. Credit card statements from about 7 years ago, under my name. But I don't recognize any of the charges." I watched her hands stop moving over the lettuce. "What kind of charges?" "Hotels in Tennessee, restaurants, a jewelry store in Knoxville." I shrugged. "I've never even been to Knoxville. Must be some kind of identity theft, but I can't figure out how I never noticed it before." Ashley's face had gone pale. She set down the knife she was holding. That's strange. You should probably call the credit card company." "Yeah, I'll look into it tomorrow. Just wanted to mention it." She nodded, but her movements had become jerky. Automatic. I knew that look. She was running calculations in her head, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much danger she was in. "I'm going to take a shower before dinner," she said abruptly. "I went to the gym earlier and I'm still sweaty." "Sure." She practically fled the kitchen. I heard the bathroom door close, and then the muffled sound of her voice. She was on the phone. The FBI recorded every word. "He's asking about old credit cards, 7 years ago, Tennessee." Ryan's voice, calm and reassuring. "It's fine. He can't trace anything back to us. The accounts were closed clean." "But what if he digs deeper? What if he finds—" "He won't. You need to stay calm. Deny everything. If he keeps pushing, tell him it must have been identity theft from some random hacker. He'll accept that." "I don't know, Ryan. He's been different lately, watching me." "You're imagining things. Taylor's oblivious. He's always been oblivious. That's why this works." A pause. Then Ashley's voice, smaller. "When can I see you?" "Thursday, same place. Now go back out there and act normal. I'll handle everything else." The line went dead. I sat at the dinner table that night, eating salad and chicken, making small talk with my kids, watching my wife pretend everything was fine. Thursday, I thought. Same place. They'd have 3 more days of freedom. Then the hammer would fall. The arrests happened on a Tuesday morning. The FBI hit Ryan and Kevin Hollister at a hotel in Nashville where they were meeting to plan their next operation. By 10 o'clock, both brothers were in federal custody, facing charges that included wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and multiple counts across 6 states. I was at my office when Agent Webb called to confirm. "It's done," he said. "They're not getting out anytime soon." "What about Ashley?" "We haven't made any moves on her yet." "That's your call, criminal charges or not." I thought about it, about Emma and Jacob, about what a criminal trial would mean for them. Their mother in handcuffs in court, maybe in prison. "No charges," I said. "Not criminally. But everything I have goes into the divorce proceedings." "Understood. Good luck, Mr. Mitchell." I hung up the phone, looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. It was time to end my marriage. I came home early that day. Ashley was in the living room, pacing, phone pressed to her ear. She hung up when she saw me. "Taylor, I didn't expect you until I know about Ryan." The words stopped her cold. She stood there, phone in hand, face frozen. "I know about the affair," I continued, my voice calm, almost conversational. "The current one and the one 7 years ago. I know he used my identity to seduce other women. I know you gave him the information he needed to do it. My scar, my car, my house, my life. Taylor, I can explain. I know you've been stealing money from our accounts, about $40,000 over the past 2 years. I have the records." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Ryan Hollister was arrested this morning. Federal charges, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. He's looking at 12 to 15 years, minimum." Ashley's legs seemed to give out. She sank onto the couch, face white. "I've already filed for divorce," I said. "The papers will be served tomorrow. I'm seeking full custody of the children based on your involvement in criminal activity against me." "The children? Taylor, you can't." "Your affair partner is going to testify against you to reduce his sentence. The FBI has recordings of your phone calls. My attorneys have documentation of every dollar you stole, every lie you told, every piece of information you gave him." I paused. Let it sink in. "The only reason you're not facing criminal charges yourself is because I chose not to pursue them. For Emma and Jacob's sake, not yours." Ashley was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Taylor. Please, I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you." "No, you don't." My voice was flat. Final. "You never did. If you had, none of this would have happened." "Let me explain. Ryan, he manipulated me. He made me think." "Stop." I held up my hand. "I've heard that excuse from other people, other women Ryan targeted. You know what the difference is between you and them? They were victims. They didn't know what he was. You knew exactly what he was, and you helped him do it. I didn't. I never thought. You never thought you'd get caught. That's different from not doing it." She stood up, taking a step toward me. "Taylor, please. After 12 years, after everything we've built together." "Everything we built?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound I barely recognized. "I built this. I built the business. I built this house. I built our life. And you were hollowing it out from the inside the whole time. That's not fair." "Fair?" My voice rose for the first time. "You want to talk about fair? Hannah Caldwell raised a child alone for 6 years because of what you and Ryan did. She thought I abandoned her. She thought the father of her son was a coward. And you stood there, in our kitchen, wearing my ring, sleeping in my bed, and never said a word." Ashley flinched like I'd struck her. "How long?" I asked. How long have you been with him? Taylor. How long? On and off. Her voice was barely audible. Since before we got married. The words hit me like a physical blow. You were seeing him while we were engaged? It wasn't like that. We met at a party, he was charming, and I was scared about getting married, about commitment. And he was there and… She trailed off. I broke it off before the wedding. I swear I did. But he came back. A few years later, after Emma was born. I was stressed. You were working all the time and he just appeared. He said he'd never forgotten me. He said I was the only one who really understood him. And you believed him. I loved him. The words came out like a confession. I know that's terrible. I know it makes me a monster. But I loved him, Taylor. Part of me still does. I stared at my wife, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years, who'd given birth to my children, who'd smiled at me across countless dinners, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. You don't know what love is, I said. Neither does he. You're two people who found each other because you're both willing to destroy anyone who gets in your way. That's not true. It is true. And the worst part is, you didn't even have to do it. If you'd come to me years ago, told me you were unhappy, told me you wanted out, I would have let you go. It would have broken me, but I would have let you go. You didn't have to steal from me. You didn't have to help him commit crimes. You didn't have to burn everything down. Ashley was sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. I picked up my briefcase. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. The kids are with your mother until we figure out custody arrangements. My attorney will be in touch. I walked to the door, stopped with my hand on the knob. One more thing. I know about the woman who introduced Ryan to Hannah Caldwell in Atlanta. Blonde, mid-30s, vouched for him at the conference. I looked back at Ashley. That was you. She had no response, just tears, just silence. I walked out of my house, our house, and didn't look back. The divorce took 5 months. Ashley tried to fight at first, hired her own attorney, filed counterclaims, attempted to paint me as controlling and vindictive. Her lawyer was a slick operator from Buckhead named Robert Kinsley. I'd seen his billboards on the highway. When you need to win. He came into the first mediation session like a pit bull, making demands, threatening countersuits. Victoria Palmer shut him down in about 15 minutes. Mr. Kinsley, your client stole $40,000 from marital accounts. We have bank records. She aided and abetted federal crimes. We have FBI documentation. She introduced her lover to women he later defrauded. We have witness testimony. Victoria slid a folder across the table. Everything your client told the FBI is now part of the public record. Would you like to review it before we continue? Kinsley's face went gray as he read through the documents. Ashley wouldn't meet my eyes. After that, there wasn't much fight left. The final judgment gave me primary custody of Emma and Jacob. Ashley got visitation every other weekend and 1 dinner per week. She received minimal alimony, just enough to maintain a basic apartment. She got no share of my business, no claim to the house, nothing except her personal belongings and a small settlement. She'd gambled everything on Ryan Hollister, and she'd lost. Ryan Hollister pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. The evidence was too overwhelming for any defense strategy. His public defender advised him to take the deal. 12 years instead of the 25 he might have faced at trial. At the sentencing hearing, I sat in the gallery and watched as several of Ryan's victims gave impact statements. There were 6 of us, men whose identities he'd stolen, women he'd seduced and abandoned. Hannah Caldwell was there, trembling but determined, telling the court about raising her son alone. When my turn came, I stood at the podium and looked at the man who had stolen my identity, seduced women in my name, and turned my wife into a criminal. He sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, face carefully blank. "You didn't just steal my name," I said. "You stole pieces of people's lives. You created children who will grow up not knowing their fathers. You left damage everywhere you went, and you did it because you enjoyed it." I paused, gathering myself. I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for justice. This man needs to be off the streets, away from any more victims for a very long time. Ryan Hollister looked at me as I spoke. For just a moment his mask slipped, and I saw something underneath. Not remorse, not fear, contempt. Pure, cold contempt. He thought he was smarter than everyone. He probably still did. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison. His brother Kevin got 8. Neither showed any reaction as they were led away in chains. I saw Hannah Caldwell one more time, about 3 months after Ryan's arrest. She'd driven down to Atlanta to meet with prosecutors, and she asked if we could talk. We met at a coffee shop. Different from the one in Knoxville, but similar enough. She looked better than the last time I'd seen her. Some of the weight lifted from her shoulders. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for not letting this go. A lot of men would have just taken the DNA test and moved on. I couldn't. Not once I knew someone was wearing my life." She nodded. "The prosecutors told me I can sue him for child support. Not that I'll get much. He's going to prison for a long time, and he doesn't have any legitimate assets. I'm sorry." "Don't be. At least now I know the truth." She looked down at her coffee. "My son, Ethan, I had to tell him his father was a bad man who's going to jail. That was hard. But at least I wasn't lying to him anymore. At least I know who he really is." I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. "What's this?" "A college fund. For Ethan. It's not much, but it's something." Hannah's eyes went wide. "I can't accept—" "Yes, you can. He's an innocent kid who got caught in the middle of something that should never have touched him. This isn't about guilt or obligation. It's just the right thing to do." She took the envelope, held it for a long moment. "You're a good man, Taylor Mitchell." "I'm trying to be." Ryan Hollister pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. The evidence was too overwhelming for any defense strategy. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with additional state charges pending in 3 jurisdictions. His brother Kevin got 8 years for his role in the forgery and fraud operations. At the sentencing hearing, several of Ryan's victims gave impact statements. I was one of them. I stood at the podium and looked at the man who had stolen my identity, seduced women in my name, and turned my wife into a criminal. He sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, face carefully blank. "You didn't just steal my name," I said. "You stole pieces of people's lives. You created children who will grow up not knowing their fathers. You left damage everywhere you went, and you did it because you enjoyed it." I paused. I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for justice. This man needs to be off the streets, away from any more victims for a very long time. The judge agreed. A year after the divorce was finalized, my life looked nothing like it had before. Emma and Jacob were adjusting. Kids are resilient, more resilient than adults sometimes. We'd had hard conversations, age-appropriate but honest. They knew their mother had done wrong things. They knew their father loved them and would always be there for them. They saw Ashley every other weekend. Those visits were awkward, I gathered. The kids came home quieter than usual, sometimes asking questions I didn't know how to answer. But we were getting through it. My business was thriving. I'd thrown myself into work after the divorce, taking on projects I'd previously thought too ambitious. It helped. Kept my mind occupied. Gave me something to build when so much had been torn down. I'd started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. A woman named Diana, a pediatrician I'd met through a mutual friend. She knew about my past, about Ashley, about all of it. She hadn't run away. We were taking things one day at a time. It was enough. The last time I saw Ashley was at Jacob's soccer game, about 14 months after everything ended. It was her weekend, so she was there, sitting on the opposite side of the field, watching our son chase a ball around with his teammates. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no residual anything. Just a mild awareness that she was there, like noticing a stranger in a crowd. After the game, she approached me. She'd lost weight, too much weight. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept well in a very long time. "Taylor," she said, "can we talk?" "About what?" "I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need you to understand." I held up a hand. "Don't. Please, just let me—" "No!" My voice wasn't harsh, just final. "You don't get to apologize your way out of this. You don't get closure. You made choices every day for years, and those choices had consequences." I started to walk away. "I still love you," she said to my back. I stopped, turned. "No, you don't. You love the idea of the life we had, the house, the stability, the picture of a perfect family. But you never loved me. If you had, none of this would have happened." I left her standing there. My son ran up to me, excited about a goal he'd almost scored. I lifted him onto my shoulders and walked toward the car. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat on my back porch with a glass of whiskey. The Georgia night was warm, cicadas singing in the darkness. My phone buzzed. Diana, asking if I wanted to get dinner later in the week. I typed back yes and hit send. The stars were bright overhead. The house was quiet. My children were sleeping safely in their rooms. Some betrayals never heal completely. There are scars that fade but never fully disappear, like the one on my shoulder from a childhood bike accident. The same scar that a man named Ryan Hollister had used to steal my identity and seduce a woman into thinking he was me. But scars don't have to define you. They're just proof that you survived something. I finished my whiskey, went inside, locked the doors. Tomorrow, there would be work to do. Buildings to design, kids to raise, a life to keep living.